On a tiny atoll called Nikumaroro in 1940, a British colonist found 13 human bones, and a woman's shoe, size 9, and a sextant box, a navigator's tool. 3,000 miles away, a pilot named Amelia Earhart had disappeared 3 years before. Her last words were clear, sharp, desperate. "We must be on you, but cannot see you. We are running north and south." She had flown 22,000 miles around the world. She had 7,000 miles left. Then she vanished. No wreckage was ever found, not then. Amelia Earhart was born in 1899 in Atchison, Kansas. Her mother encouraged her to be a tomboy, to climb, to run, to be unafraid. In 1921, when she was 22, she paid to fly in a biplane. She flew up 1,200 feet, straight up into the blue. She spent every dime she had earned as a mechanic, as a truck driver, as a stenographer. She knew after that flight she was going to be a pilot. On June 17, 1928, she flew across the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger. But she was not flying the plane. Wilma Stoltz was. She was the passenger, the only woman aboard. 20 hours later, they reached Buryport, Wales. But she knew the truth. She had not been flying. She had been flying blind. She wanted to fly across alone, to prove it. On May 20, 1932, she took off from Newfoundland in a Lockheed Vega. She flew alone, through fog, through electrical storms, through ice forming on the windscreen. 14 hours and 56 minutes later, she landed in a cow pasture in Ireland. First woman to fly across the Atlantic, alone. In 1931, she met George Palmer Putnam, a publisher, a promoter. He believed in her. He wanted to marry her. She said no 3 times. The 4th time he asked, she said yes. She kept her maiden name. GP saw the world tour as the next step. Fly around the equator, 27,000 miles. She needed a new plane, bigger, faster, with more range. Lockheed built her the Electra 10E, registration NR16020. It cost $80,000. In 1936 money. She hired Fred Noonan as her navigator. Noonan was the best. He had navigated every ocean route for Pan American Airways. Rumors said he drank, that he had been fired from Pan Am for alcoholism. Amelia chose him anyway. She needed the best. On June 1, 1937, the Electra lifted off from Miami. Destination, Howland Island. 2,556 nautical miles, 21 hours of flying. They stopped in Puerto Rico, then Carapito, Venezuela, then Paramaribo, Suriname, then Natal, Brazil, the last major city before crossing the Atlantic. The Electra was loaded with fuel, so much fuel the plane sat lower in the water. June 7, they left Natal heading to Africa, St. Louis, Senegal, 1,700 miles across open water. On June 8, they landed in Africa. Amelia's hands were shaking. By June 13, they had reached Karachi, India. 17 stops, 13,000 miles flown. Amelia had slept maybe 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. By June 17, they reached Bangkok, Thailand. By June 20, they reached Lae, New Guinea. 22,000 miles flown. Lae was the launching point, the longest leg of the journey, the most dangerous. From Lae to Howland Island, 2,556 nautical miles, 21 hours. Howland Island is 1.5 square miles. To put that in perspective, finding it is like standing in New York and hitting a golf ball to Los Angeles and making a hole in one. They would have one weather window, one chance. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca was stationed at Howland to receive them. Radio operator Leo Bellarts was scheduled to receive Amelia's transmissions. They tested the radio frequency, 3,105 kilohertz. Both sides checked the signal. Amelia and Fred loaded the final fuel drums, extra gasoline for every available space in the cabin. The Electra was now over maximum takeoff weight. They would have to use nearly every inch of the runway at Lae to take off. July 1, 1937, final preparations. They checked fuel, they checked engines, they checked every rigging line and wire. Weather forecast for July 2nd, favorable. Clear skies over most of the route. At 10:03 a.m. on July 2nd, Amelia pushed the throttles forward. The engines roared. The Electra began to roll down the runway. The runway was muddy from recent rain. The wheels sank slightly with each pass. But she kept accelerating. 3,000 feet of runway, 22,000 pounds of aircraft and fuel. At the very end of the runway, the wheels left the earth. The Electra climbed slowly. It was too heavy, too much fuel. barely flying. Fred Noonan was in the back, in the navigation cabin, charts spread before him. They flew eastward, across the empty Pacific. Nothing but water in every direction. At 450 meters altitude, the ocean below was perfectly clear. Radio contact was established with the Itasca at 3 a.m., 8 hours into the flight. Amelia's voice was clear. She reported her position. She reported her fuel consumption rate. She had fuel for 5 more hours. That would get her to Howland. As daylight came, Fred used his sextant to take celestial observations. The sun, the moon, the stars. Navigation by the stars was an art. It required precise timing and calculation. A single degree of error would miss Howland Island entirely. At 6 a.m., 7 hours into the flight, Amelia transmitted again. They were directly on the equator, right where they should be. Fred Noonan had computed the most precise navigation fix possible from celestial observation. Howland should be directly ahead, dead straight line, 140 nautical miles. At 6:50 a.m., 8 hours and 50 minutes into the flight, Amelia transmitted. "We are looking for Howland, position 200 miles south, flying north and south. 200 miles. That was 5 times the distance she had calculated. Someone had made an error. The wind, the current, an error in the celestial fix. At 7:42 a.m., Amelia transmitted again. "We must be on the line north and south of Howland. We are running north and south." She was flying a search pattern, north, then south, then north again. The sun was rising. The glare off the water was blinding. At 8:03 a.m., nearly 10 hours into the flight, the final message came. Her voice was loud and clear. "We are on the line north and south. Static. We are running north and south." She had enough fuel for perhaps 1 more hour. She must have been terrified. At 8:43 a.m., 10 hours and 40 minutes into the flight, she transmitted for the final time. "We must be on you, but cannot see you. We must be running on a line north and south." Then silence. Radio operator Leo Bellarts kept transmitting, calling her, over and over. No answer came back. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited. The sun rose higher. The day grew hot. They had heard her voice at 8:43 a.m. She was within 100 miles. 100 miles, in an ocean that covers 64 million square miles. The Itasca began searching, steaming in circles, sending out radio signals every few minutes. Nothing. At 1 p.m. they spotted an object, 200 yards away. It was a piece of wreckage. But it was not from the Electra. All afternoon, the Itasca broadcast on the frequency, calling, waiting. By sunset, there had been no response for over 10 hours. Commander Warner Thompson ordered the search expanded. Within hours, every Coast Guard vessel in the Pacific was ordered to Howland. President Franklin Roosevelt was informed. The U.S. Navy sent the aircraft carrier USS Lexington. The Lexington had 100 aircraft, bombers, fighters, seaplanes. The search was now the largest in naval history at that time. 4 million square miles of open ocean, and 1 very small airplane. They searched every horizon. They flew grid patterns. They called continuously. For 16 days, the search continued. 16 days, thousands of miles searched, hundreds of tons of fuel burned. No trace of the Electra was found. On July 19th, the search was suspended. The assumption was made the Lockheed Electra had crashed into the Pacific. Amelia Earhart was declared legally dead on January 5, 1939. The mystery that would never be solved appeared to be closed. But in 1940, 3 years after her disappearance, something was found. On a remote island, 2,000 miles away, Gerald Gallagher was a British colonist on Nikumaroro, a manager of a coconut plantation. On October 23, 1940, he found bones on the beach. Not a few bones, a significant portion of a skeleton. And nearby he found a shoe, a woman's shoe, size 9, and a sextant box, a wooden case with brass fittings, used by navigators. Gallagher collected the bones, he collected the shoe, he collected the case. He sent the items to Fiji for anthropological examination. Then they were lost. For 58 years, the bones sat in a Fiji warehouse, forgotten. In 1998, researchers from TIGHAR, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, found them. They examined the skeleton. They found something significant. The skeleton was female, age 35 to 50, height 5 feet 7 inches. That was Amelia Earhart's height. The skeleton showed signs of living on an island for an extended period, months, Years. The shoe, a women's Oxford's, size 9, cat's paw brand sole. That was consistent with the shoes Amelia wore in 1937. The sextant case. It was a Villain and Sons case, a precision instrument box. It was consistent with the navigation equipment the Electra carried. But the evidence was not conclusive, not definitive. It could have been from any navigator. TIGHAR continued searching on Nikumaroro and in the historical record. In 1999, they found something else, a jar, an anti-freckle cream jar. The brand was Moraline Antiseptic Healing Oil, with a label showing a woman with no freckles. That was a cosmetic product sold in the United States in the 1930s. The jar was found near where the other artifacts were discovered. In 2004, TIGHAR made an announcement. Based on the skeletal analysis by forensic anthropologist Richard Jantz, the bones were 95% consistent with Amelia Earhart. But 95% is not 100%, and other researchers disagreed. The bone analysis was flawed, they said. The US Navy response was immediate and massive. Within 24 hours of the final transmission, the fleet was mobilized. The aircraft carrier USS Lexington was en route from the West Coast, 3 days away. But they did not wait. Every ship that could reach Howland was dispatched immediately. The US CGC Itasca expanded its search pattern, north, south, east, west. They launched small aircraft, searching nearby islands, searching nearby atolls. At 2 p.m. on July 2nd, only 5 hours after the final transmission, they spotted wreckage. It was nothing. Debris from some other ship, from some other year. They continued searching. The Itasca covered over 200,000 square miles. By July 5th, the USS Lexington had arrived and launched continuous aircraft sorties. 100 planes searching every horizon. They searched every island in the area: Howland, Baker, Jarvis, Canton, Enderbury. Every island was photographed from the air. Every island was searched on the ground. They called her name, over and over, on every frequency. No response, ever. By July 8th, the search had expanded to 4 million square miles. 4 million square miles. The area of the continental United States. They searched for 16 days, every single day. Thousands of gallons of fuel burned, hundreds of planes flying, thousands of personnel involved. By July 19th, even the Navy admitted defeat. Not a single piece of wreckage from the Electra was found. Not a single piece of evidence, not in the water, not on any island. The assumption was made the Electra had crashed in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan had sunk without a trace, 1.5 miles deep. There was no wreckage to find, no bodies to recover, no grave to mark. The world assumed the mystery was solved. The Electra had crashed, the crew had drowned. But the mystery was far from over. In 2024, 87 years after her disappearance, something appeared on sonar, an underwater object on the seafloor south of Nikumaroro, the shape consistent with a Lockheed Electra. But the sonar image was not definitive. It could have been any aircraft, any wreckage. The Japanese capture theory that the Electra landed on a Japanese military island was thoroughly investigated. All serious historical evidence pointed in one direction. The Japanese never captured Amelia Earhart. But what if she had landed on Nikumaroro? What if she had survived the crash? The bones told a story of years on an island, of repair, of recovery, of death from exposure. The artifacts, the shoe, the sextant case, the cosmetic jar, all consistent with Amelia Earhart and her 1937 journey. But the scientific community remained divided. The evidence was tantalizing, but not conclusive. What happened to Amelia Earhart remains the greatest aviation mystery in history. Unsolved, unresolved, waiting.